And so let me take the time to introduce her as well. Before she became a congresswoman, Donna Edwards served as the chair of the ARCA Foundation, and she has been on the front lines of making sure that democracy is available for all for many, many years. I don't know much about conservative compassion, but I know a heck of a lot about passionate progressivism, and nobody embodies that more than the Congresswoman from Maryland, Donna Edwards.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Thanks. It's really good to be here. I remember almost 20 years ago, there's Nick Neihart back there, when we were meeting to talk about public financing, there were like 10 people in the room. And so this is a good day. And I think yesterday, somebody correct me about the number, because I don't know whether there was an M or a B after it, but I know that the first number was 33. Was it $1 million that have been spent by the banking and credit card industry and the financial securities industry in lobbying? That's right, since last Monday. If that doesn't tell the story, I don't really know what does. And I just want to applaud all of our panelists today for your work and the discussion, especially our candidates who've actually run under a clean election system. We know that we can elect candidates with clean elections. We know that when that happens, they just come into office in a different kind of way, with a different kind of attitude about what it means to protect the public interest and not just corporate special interests. And so I think the imperative for us to do clean elections is right now. And several months ago I'd said, well, clearly what's happening with the presidential public financing system tells us that we need to do something, but we're in a totally different day now. If you, in terms of public policy, and I've just been in the Congress for 3 months, so I don't really know anything. But I'll tell you what I do know, and it is that when you have an energy policy that's driven by corporations who've managed to maneuver tax breaks for themselves, contribute money to campaigns, and then they end up walking away with the store. And now here we are all over again with the financial services industry. And it's over and over and over again that our public policy, whether we're talking about the state or local level or the federal level, is being polluted by this money that's in the system. And there are some people who are going to make the big argument about First Amendment rights and free speech and all of that stuff. But I'm going to tell you something. There's nothing free for the rest of us when you have a system that is so tainted by this money that we can't get the job of the people done. And so you all have a lot of work to do in your states and your local communities, and we have a lot of work to do collectively in the United States Congress to say, you know what, if we have to bring you kicking and screaming along, we are going to clean up these elections so that we can have the kind of public policy that works for us at home. So apart from the work that I did at the ARCA Foundation, and I was not the chair, because that would have meant I would have really had the money. I didn't have any money. But I was the executive director of the ARCA Foundation for 10 years. And the foundation, both under my direction and when I was a grantee running nonprofit groups working on campaign finance reform, has been a stalwart in funding a lot of these efforts, both nationally and locally and at the state level, to clean up our elections. And we're joined by a lot of folks in philanthropy who believe that it's time to step up, because we know that when we don't have clean elections, we don't get the education system that we want. We don't make the kind of investments in water and sewer and transportation and other kinds of infrastructure and mass transit instead of funding roads and gas stations. We don't get the public policy that we want because of this system of the way that we elect folks. And one of the things that I have learned as a candidate, and I hadn't run for office besides 11th grade class president until I ran for Congress. I won 11th grade class president. I just want you to know that. But I hadn't done that, and I didn't know, even working on the outside, working for campaigns and candidates, and organizing in my community, and also just sort of running. I didn't understand what it really meant to be a candidate who had to pick up the phone and just hour after hour calling people, and I'm going to tell you, begging for money. Now, some of you are my friends out here, and so I didn't have to beg all that much, but it's really humiliating, actually. To call people and say, and I was always used to raising money. I ran domestic violence organizations. I was used to raising money to help fund shelters and services for people who had experienced domestic violence, for women and children. I could do that. I was used to raising money for our local soup kitchens. I was used to raising money for school programs in our school and with the Boys and Girls Club. But raising money to run a campaign, there is just something that is just really vile about that. And the experience of doing it as a candidate, it just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like the thing that I ought to be spending so much time on. And I was exhausted from my primary election in February, and it was a great time. But I had to raise $1 million, and then there were a lot of people who spent money independently, and God love them. But it's the kind of system where after I finished sleeping, the election was February 12th, and I went to sleep on February 13th, and I woke up on February 14th, Valentine's Day, and you know what I was doing? Picking up the phone, calling somebody else to ask them to give me money. And so it just starts over and over and over again. And you know what it gets in the way of? It gets in the way of my having the opportunity to read, that last article on some bill that I'm going to vote on. It gets in the way of my sitting down with a group of constituents who have a real concern about what needs to happen in our communities and our country. It gets in the way of studying, a $700 billion bailout of the financial services industry. It gets in the way of that stuff, and it shouldn't. And so I won't go on because, now I'm in Congress, and so I've learned that you could just talk and talk and talk. But I will say this. I think there are good people who serve in public office at every level, really, really good people who want to do the business of the people. And so we have to create for them a system that enables them to actually exercise their goodness. And so I thank you for what you're doing here today and what you will learn about what you can do in your communities and with this Congress. And I look forward to working with all of you and my colleagues to say, we're going to go, and it may be, dragging us kicking and screaming, but we are going to get out of this system that so undermines who we are. So thank you very much for allowing me a few minutes.